In section 15 of your build, we'd like you to verify the tension on your cog belt system. Then we're going to install the idler, the retention strap, and the safety spacer. The safety spacer has two functions. Number one, we grease the shaft, and the safety spacer contains that to prevent corrosion and rust. Number two, in the very unlikely event that the retaining compound or the lock rings were to fail, that prevents the shaft from moving within the bearings. So let's get started with 15.
Refer to the Construction Manual, Section 15, for components and prints. The cog belt tension was adjusted and measured in Section 11 of the Construction Video series. This is the cog belt tensioner as supplied by Rotorway. The tensioner is mounted on the lateral square drive tube in the front of the secondary sprocket. The tensioner is held in place by the two bolts that attach the secondary upper bearing mount. Before removing the nuts, make sure you have an index mark on the airframe and upper bearing mount. In addition, loosen the fan countershaft and alternator belts. Remove the nuts and install the tensioner. Place two large 1/8 inch thick fender washers between the tensioner and nuts on the 5/16 inch bolts. Lightly snug the nuts. Make sure the tensioner mechanism is completely retracted. Apply 10 pounds of pressure on the back side of the belt, passenger side. Slide the tensioner to the pilot side until it just engages the teeth of the belt. Make sure the idler is parallel both fore and aft and laterally. Torque the bolts to 15 foot-pounds. You will need a 1/2 inch crow's foot to torque the pilot side lock nut. With a straight edge, check that all sprocket teeth are fully engaged. The idler sprocket height should be centered on the belt. It's okay if the idler sprocket is just slightly high. Make a 45-degree bend on the end with the slotted hole about 3/4 of an inch from the end. Hold in place and determine the position of the bend at the other end on top of the square tube. Make sure the hole position on the square tube does not interfere with the operation of the clutch tube. Match drill the hole through the strap and 1-inch square tube. Install the strap with the hardware. Do not over-tighten the bolt as it could collapse the square tube. With the strap secured to the airframe, check the fore-aft plane of the idler is parallel with the sprockets. Make an adjustment if necessary. Make an index mark on the rear secondary sprocket to align with the split in the retainer ring. This will allow you to check for any movement pre- and post-flight. Locate the safety spacer and clamps. Note: the lock ring must be finally installed before finding the fit for the safety spacer. Hold the spacer in place and make a mark for a snug fit. Cut the spacer. The spacer needs to be cut in half. Make a straight line by placing a marker on the surface and slide the spacer along from end to end. Clamp a board or square tubing on your saw and cut the spacer in 2 equal pieces. Deburr the edges smooth and check the fit. On your final install, coat the shaft with grease to prevent corrosion and surface rust. A marine-type bearing grease works well for this. Use 2 clamps to secure the halves in place. Final checklist for the drive system. 1. Front and rear sprockets should be the same height, measured from the top of the anti-excursion rings. 2. Secondary and idler sprockets should be parallel to each other, both fore-aft and laterally. 3. Secondary sprocket should be tilted back 0.1 of a degree and 0.1 of a degree to the pilot's side compared to the main sprocket. This ensures good belt tracking. 4. Make sure all bolts are properly tensioned, safety wired, and/or secured with a thread locker. Also, check that the bearings are Loctited, locking rings set, and set screws are tightened. 5. Cog belt should be tensioned so that 5 pounds of force in each direction gives a total deflection of 5/8 inches to 3/4 inches at about 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. 6. Tensioner assembly should move smoothly by hand without any undue breakout pressure. 7. Tensioner pulley height should be centered on the cog belt. 8. Cog belt should stay centered on the sprockets. Belt should not ride up on the excursion ring.